people, what made you go, thank God I broke up with him or her after you met your ex again after some time? I'm not sure if this applies since she technically did the breaking up, but I was the one who decided I didn't want to get back together, but here it goes. We dated for 2 years before she broke up with me. She wanted to get married, and for some reason I couldn't explain, I just wasn't ready to commit. She would constantly complain that I was just leading her on and I had no intention of ever marrying her or trying to guilt me into it, and I would respond, I'm working on it, don't worry, it'll happen eventually, please be patient. At the time, I legitimately believed I was in love with her and that we would get married eventually, but I just couldn't bring myself to go through with it despite the fact that I was living on my own and had a job that would support us getting married and starting a family. Eventually, she got tired of my excuses and gave me an ultimatum. We get engaged or she leaves. I was given 1 month to get everything in order or she would leave. Well, needless to say, I didn't do it. I would drive to the store every day after work and sit in the parking lot trying to get up the courage to go in and buy the stupid engagement ring. I even went in and looked around a few times, but I could never bring myself to buy anything. After the month was up, we still weren't engaged and she left. I understood. She wanted something and I simply wasn't ready to get married yet. I was heartbroken at first, but I understood. But as the weeks turned into months, I had time to examine the person I was and who I had become while in that relationship. And I realized that I had made myself into someone I didn't like while in that relationship. My entire personality had become I am my girlfriend's boyfriend, and I was no longer my own person. I wore a mask every day, and I had made myself into someone who would make her happy. I think ultimately that is why I wasn't ready to marry this person, because deep down, I knew I didn't like the person I had become with her. 4 months after we broke up, she called me asking if we could meet for coffee. While we talked, she asked if I wanted to get back together. In the moment, I could have very easily said yes, and I would simply slip that old comfortable mask back on and become the person she wanted me to be. But I liked myself for the first time in years. I was making new friends, learning new skills, getting fit, working a job I loved, and my relationship with my family was better than it had ever been. I liked the person I was without her in my life, so I said no, and we haven't spoken since. It's been a year since we last talked. I'm seeing someone new, and I love her more than anything. And more importantly, she loves me, not for the person I am when I'm with her, but for the person I am in reality. I can be myself with her. There's no need for a mask. I'm happy to say that I was able to go back to the ring store, and I hope to be engaged soon. All right, that's what I want to hear, a happy ending. But I have a feeling story 2 is not going to end as well, but let's find out. This is story 2. I dated a girl for a little over 2 years. I thought she was insanely cute and seemed fun. She was head over heels for me from the start, which made me happy to hear since I've never felt attractive, and that helped my ego a little. I was tipsy when I asked her to be my girlfriend. We were both drinking a lot at the start since I had just turned 21. Within a few weeks, I questioned whether or not I wanted the relationship, but stuck through it. Things got worse, much worse. She would literally cry if we were watching TV and a girl in a bikini popped up. She had major self-esteem issues, anxiety, and depression. She never did anything worse but said she had those issues, which I believed. She always accused me of looking at girls in TV shows and movies and wanting them over her, which was never true. She was extremely controlling and she made me stop smoking grass because she hated it. And because I had no willpower, I let her control me. She always thought I was cheating on her or was trying to, which I never did. Even though I had reasonable proof that she had actually cheated on me at a bar not too long after we started dating. She denied it for the entire relationship. Finally, after we broke up, she admitted it. She only kissed a guy, which wasn't that big of a deal, but it was the lying that made me happy that we were over. A few months later, the guy she started dating after me, who didn't like me at all, started messaging me, asking about our relationship and if she had ever cheated on me. I told him the truth, which was that she kissed another guy while we were dating and also used to flirt with guys at the bar when I wasn't with her. He had asked because apparently she cheated on him multiple times. This guy then proceeded to tell me that he and she were going to get another guy involved with them. He suggested that I come and be involved in that without telling her that it was me. She didn't have any contact with me and hated me after our relationship ended. I very politely told him how messed up that was and that I was not looking to basically violate my ex-girlfriend because I learned at a young age that if a girl isn't interested in you or doesn't like you, that's a stern no. I was very happy that it ended. I don't know where she is now. However, I'm now happily married to an amazing woman and stepfather to a beautiful 3-year-old. We also have one of our own on the way, due in January. Okay, so I was proven wrong yet again in the second story, having such a happy ending, making a new baby and all. Good times, good times. Let's keep the ball rolling and hopefully the same thing happens in story 3. I can't see how it gets any better than that, though. Let's find out. This is story 3. We met when I was a bit younger, and he's 19. He knew what he was doing was wrong and he didn't care. Things ended badly. I don't really want to talk about it. My parents still love to bring up the time I was a call girl and other things that are just great for my mental well being. Like today, for instance. You want to know why your 22-year-old daughter is watching DuckTales and living at home without a college degree? Because you emotionally stunted her and mishandled her trauma. Anyhow, we reunited on Facebook not very long after I turned 18, like he was waiting or something. I wasn't in a great place and was easily manipulated. I was this close to doing it for the sake of doing it, and he took advantage of that. He sent me this whole sick plan. We'd meet up in the town he'd fled to avoid the police and my father, who was angry at him for about 24 hours. For reference, my dad stayed angry at me for I could bring James up today and I'd have 2 angry parents. Then things got weird, like really weird. It became more of his fantasy or plan. I really don't want to go into detail, but let's just say if my idiot friend had actually given me the ride instead of flaking off to see her boyfriend instead, I'd either be missing or on one of those I almost passed away shows. The thing is, I was kind of into it. Like I said, bad place. My depressed jelly of a useless hunk of a brain, which is too weak to end it all personally, decided to let someone else do the job. I mean, eventually. We didn't make some kind of pact, just something along the lines of his keeping me as his secret plaything on his buddy's ranch way out in the middle of nowhere, you know? Absolutely nothing could ever go wrong, right? I was into it. It wasn't until our former mutual friend reached out to me, randomly, out of the blue. She goes, "Are you friends with James?" And after playing around because she busted us last time, I finally might have said something along the lines of, "Yeah, so what I remember most is, you do know he's married, right? They have a baby. She wanted to let you have it, but I'm here as a friend telling you to back off." I let him have it and blocked him. I deleted everything on my end. I took a break from social media. I came back to a message from a new burner account. He was all sorry and then angry, and then who I assume was his wife came on and let me have it. Because it's clearly, once again, my fault that he's a scumbag. God, I hate him. And next time he reaches out, I swear to God, I'm setting up a sting. And that marks the end of the happy streak, but hey, that is what you and I are here for. The good stories, the good stuff, whether that's actually good or bad, just like this last one. Let's go ahead and see what's up in story 4. My relationship with this ex was an online relationship, and I've had 2 that I've happily ended. But this one in particular, I'm most glad about. We were both kids, our age difference was a bit too big, and we got judged for it from time to time. Anyway, since I was so in love with him, I didn't realize how much of a manipulative a-hole he really was. He would start fights with people in group chats for no reason, brag about how tough he was and that he could hurt anyone, how muscular and fit he was, and so on. I got to see him on video call several times, and he was muscular, but he wasn't that big. Maybe a bit lean. I believed his story about being able to rough up anyone, though, being as stupid as I was. He would lie to me about all kinds of stuff, like this one girl he knew in real life who began tormenting me all because I advised my ex to stay away from her after she tried to end him in his sleep, and she kept claiming it was a joke. He claimed he stayed away from her and that he was on my side. I would slowly find out his lies, and we would get into these big arguments over them, making me really depressed and wondering why stuff had to keep going wrong. But after he ended up leaving me for another girl more than a year later, I found out the truth about everything. He was secretly doing substances, hanging out with bad people, and doing tons of other stuff he lied to me about. After I had gotten over him, a long and tedious process, he would message me all the time even after I blocked him. He would just make new accounts to come back and try to be my friend or get on my good side, so I thought, why not? We could at least just stay friends. But nope. In the middle of casual discussions, he would bring up our past and explain why everything was my fault, when most of it was his fault, then try to get me jealous by bringing up all the girls who have flirted with him before or gotten close to having it with him before because he knew how badly I wanted to meet him back when I was dating him. When I heard from other girls who dated him after me, they told me about how he would try to get them jealous with other girls too, and he was going around on them all the time. He told his current girlfriend to tell his second ex-girlfriend, the girl he left me for her to go end herself in an attempt to make his second ex jealous, and a ton more. Needless to say, with everything I've seen, I'm so glad he's not a part of my life anymore. Story 5. I didn't date either of these girls, but I'm glad I didn't. Two gals I knew named Lizzie and Courtney. I like them both. Well, one thing the three of us would do is rent a hotel room for a night, order and eat pizza, watch TV, and go swimming. It was, at the time, a good time. Well, one night the girls managed to sneak some booze in and decided to party. I didn't drink anything. So after an hour or so, they are both intoxicated on the same bed with me on the other. The next thing I know, they are trying to coax me over. They kept saying not to worry, they wanted it. Like I said, I was a bit scared. I freaked out and left the room. I came back like 30 minutes later and they had passed out on the one bed. I managed to shut off all the lights and go to bed by myself in the other bed. We wake up the next day and they grill me about not having relations with them. They were mad about it. I tried to explain how I was freaked out by it all of a sudden and didn't know what to do. They dismissed me and then we go home. Lizzie's older sister Rachel found me a few days later and asked me if I got with them. Embarrassed but not willing to lie, I say no and explain what happened. She sighs in clear relief and I'm confused. She says that they had made a pact to get a random guy to the hotel and get them pregnant at the same time. You can imagine my shock. I confronted them about it and they admitted it was true. I yell at them saying how messed up that is, but they don't care. So I left their house and never spoke to them again. They tried to contact me, but I refused over the years. It turns out they managed to get some sucker in the hotel eventually and got knocked up at the same time just a few months later. They both turned out to be terrible mothers and junkies. So I didn't date either, but I certainly thought, thank God I never dated them. Alright, since we're almost halfway through these crazy mad stories now, don't forget to hit that like button if you're enjoying the content so far. And hey, if you're not already subscribed, now's the perfect time to do so because it really does help me out. Thank you in advance, and here's story 6. We broke up well over 2 or 3 years ago. Less than 6 months ago, I got added to a group chat in which he explained to his friends that he basically only tried to use relationships to get some. And when he didn't get what he wanted, he dumped the girlfriend he was dating and moved on to the next in the hopes of getting it. I dated him for 3 months. Eventually, he became really impatient with me and tried to manipulate me to have relations with him, saying how happy it'd make him. He'd tell me stories about how he dyed his hair black when he liked an emo girl and wanted to attract her attention, but she kept rejecting him. He lied about losing his V card to that same girl when he was young, while he claimed she was 21 after she took pity on him, in his words. He did some messed up stuff during our relationship, such as getting physical with me on purpose and nearly missing his train on purpose, in the hopes of my parents allowing him to stay over for the night. Then there was a time we actually planned for him to stay over. That morning, my mother said she changed her mind. I told him over text well in advance that my mother changed her mind and he couldn't stay over. He read the message and came over with all his stuff. Either way, he thought it was being smart by still coming to stay over, thinking my parents couldn't kick him out or deny him from sleeping over. I was furious. After we broke up, I saw him again on Instagram a while back. I didn't actually meet him again in person, thank God. And he gained even more weight. He was already gaining weight like crazy at the end of our relationship, grew out his neckbeard, and bought a fedora. He basically turned into a neckbeard, and he doesn't look like he's showering regularly either. He was more messed up than I originally thought he was. Story 7. This dude was my first love, but I was just someone who would dote on him and he'd do nothing in return. I never met his parents, never visited me during summer breaks or Christmas, and rarely had relations, like literally 5 times in a year or so. Dude emotionally manipulated me all the time to keep me around, but I was a secret his entire life. He first broke up with me through text. 3 weeks later, he manages to talk me back into being with him again so I can help him with the project. Then he graduated and completely ghosted me. I never heard from him again. Over a year later, he decided to text me the day I got into an accident that totaled my parents' lives after 5 days of being in the hospital with my dad after he had a stroke. He didn't know any of this. Of course, I'd blocked him on all social media and literally hadn't posted a single thing about it. My response was venomous, and if I hadn't been emotionally wrecked, I would have called him and started screaming. Mind you, all of this was when I was in college. This grown man was nothing but a wolf in sheep's clothing, and I bought every second of it. It still makes me feel like crap that I fell for it as long as I did. Story 8. Alright, this will be a little different since it's an ex-friend rather than a romantic ex. I was friends with this guy starting sometime in middle school and we were friends for about 6 years. Eventually, we both got our licenses and that's when things went downhill. He began getting into booze and light substances and our friendship essentially ended when During an event for school, he was so out of it he needed to be babysat and walk around since he could barely stand up, and we ended up getting into a huge argument over it. Yes, he drove home against many of us offering to take him home and get his car the next day after sobering up. A few years later, I'm mainly out of touch with him and haven't talked since the end of high school when, out of nowhere, a massive tragedy happened with someone we used to go to school with and an initial arrest for DUI. He now has a felony charge and is doing time. I'm not upset over what happened between us, as friends go their own way time and again over simpler things. Really, I just feel bad for him, and more so for the person who lost their life due to stupid decisions on his part that should have been so easy to avoid. Story 9. He dumped me, but thank God he did. He followed me to a gas station about 6 months after he randomly dumped me and then told me he was going to be gone soon. Then he wouldn't let me leave because he needed to talk to me but wouldn't say a coherent sentence that I cared about. Then he changed his name and set up a Bumble account, except he stayed in the same city, so my friend immediately recognized him and called him out on it, and he deleted the account. Thank God that happened because he was psychotic. Another guy dumped me too, but it's okay because shortly after that, he not only invited himself on a road trip I planned to see the new guy I was seeing. This was like 3 months after, and he invited himself after returning a book I needed for school. We weren't even friends. Then he posted his mugshot on his Twitter as though he was proud of it. That was pretty bad. Thank God he broke up with me because my stupid self was young and naive. Alright, so that's 2 thank gods in the same story. I don't know what it is, but dude, the quality of dudes out there, sometimes it makes me ashamed. Story 10. This ex and I had a long history. He was the first friend I made when my parents divorced and I moved in with dad in a new neighborhood. We had helped each other through breakups and tragedies, and we always found new adventures to go on. I got to my senior year and we started dating. After a while, I noticed comments being made at me, no effort to get a job. He was 6 years older than me and I paid his phone bill, and just awful worldviews that make no sense. I broke it off and he proceeded to spam my phone with calls and photos of him and his arm. A few months later, I'm back in town for a small reunion of friends. He was there and we had polite chit-chat. He was still living with his parents, drinking too much, and only working 3 days a week at the Taco Bell within walking distance since he didn't have a car either. I can only imagine I would be similarly stuck if I had stayed. No thanks. Story 11. She was awful to me, completely toxic. She was a spoiled child, which was only partially her fault, looking at you, Dr. Daddy. But that went into every facet of who she was. She dumped me, much to my dismay, at the time, and we reconnected several years later, nearly 5, I think. For a short time, she would call me at night after her husband had fallen into another stupor, and she would smoke a cigarette, and complain to me about how miserable she was, how little she was making as a psychologist, like I told her she would, and how awful her marriage was. I realized that she'd always be miserable and would find people who made her even more miserable to give her reasons to complain. Thank God I got out of there. I'm not saying my life, my marriage, or my wife are perfect, but it could have been so much worse. So before you go, let me just say a big thank you for joining me today and learning how to dodge major bullets. Now, if you're itching for more crazy stories and some crazy lessons to be learned, please be sure to stick around and watch our next video. What did your crazy ex do after your breakup? Story 2 is insane and it really does kind of creep me out. I'll see you there, and thank you for watching this one.